Yes, yes, yes. If you just tuned in, we came on an extra hour early. You are tuned into the Black Westchester presents the People Before Politics radio show, episode 339. Give me the real talk since 2014. Our next guest, and I'm sorry, Terry, I just seen a private message. I would have told him to hold on so you could have talked to him. He had asked me to tell Andre to stay on a little longer so you could talk to him. But
Oh,
I can definitely connect you. That's not a problem. So our next guest, Terry Lee Watson, founder of Strategies for Justice, BWMP LLC, has been presenting on the topic of race and white supremacy for over 20 years. Mr. Watson has presented at universities, K through 12, social justice organizations, and conferences. He most recently focused his most recent focus has been with law enforcement through his presentation, "The Battle with Moses People, what happened when Black Lives Matter meet Blue Lives Matter." We've had a run-in with Blue Lives Matter. A true believer in having civil discourse. Mr. Watson constantly challenges perspectives, leading to him writing this book. Welcome to the sick mind of a sane person, where he asks the questions how we as Black conscious people participate in sustaining white supremacy. And the title of the book is Welcome to the Sick Mind of a Sane Person, Deconstructing Racism and White Supremacy. Welcome to the show, my brother.
welcome, my brother.
Oh, it's great to see you both, man. Oh man, I was listening to the brother beforehand and listening to that father's story. I just started thinking about an incident that happened to me and my daughter at the doctor's office,
Mm,
and it goes beyond the court system, right? And so,
right.
uh, one of the things that got me going, and I don't get angry often. So let's put that in pretense. I don't get angry often, but I took my daughter to the doctor, and the thing is too, I understand the protocol for when your daughter reaches a certain age, they want to talk to your daughter by themselves, and I support that, right? Because
Right.
we want to make sure that there's a space for young teens, especially young daughters, to come forward if there's any kind of sexual abuse in the home.
Absolutely.
But my daughter and we have a really good relationship, and so my daughter was like, "I like my father to be in a room." And when my daughter says that to the doctor, that should have been the indicator to bring me back to the room. So when I get back to the doctor's office, and with my daughter, the first thing the doctor says to me is, "I think we're going to have your wife coming with her." I said, "Why? Why? What's wrong? I'm her parent too.
Right.
Whatever issues that my daughter may or may have, or what you want to discuss, as her father, I'm just as responsible for her well-being as my wife is."
Right.
Um, and I guess she came on. She was talking about, there were certain topics she wanted to discuss with my wife and not me, and I was like, that's a problem that we currently have, is the way that not just the justice system but the medical system, the education system, how they treat in Black fathers, man. And when that brother was telling that story, I just got a flashback to how angry I was. And my daughter, being the smart woman that she's growing up to be, she sort of picked up on that, and she made it very clear that she asked to bring me back in the room, way before they came and got me. And then I found out, fast forward, that when my son goes to the doctor with my wife, she doesn't have to wait in the waiting room. Huh? Huh?
Exactly. Exactly.
And
Exactly.
I said to myself, we as we know that there are many young men out there that is assaulted by women, and they should have that same opportunity to tell what's going on too. So when I heard that brother's story, I was like, yeah, I can. He experienced it through the justice system, and I experienced it through the medical system. So it's
Yeah.
something that we got to retrain America's mind.
Yeah, exactly. And it falls into some of the things that you're talking about. I didn't get to finish the book, but I got into it, and I highlighted some things that I wanted to talk about. But it falls into redefining, right, how we think as Black men, right, redefining the narrative of Black men, and I think that for whatever reason, us being the age of the toxic man, right, and the age that Black men were silent. Like I talk about with my friend, like this last presidential election, right?
Yeah.
Black men had no voice.
No.
Was it you better not say you didn't like Kamala, right? You laughing, but you know, man, like you.
Wait. I go a step further. Going back 4 years, a female came into the studio. We was doing a show in the studio, and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. I was supporting Bernie. Like, she looked me in my face and told me that I was a sexist because I wasn't supporting Hillary. And we've had sisters say that, oh, what's wrong with you? You're not going to support the Black woman for AG with Tish James? I said, actually, I am supporting the Black woman, but I was supporting the other Black woman. You know what I'm saying? But it was just like, you know what I'm saying? But I was just like, I've had women look me in the studio, like in my face, and told me I was a sexist because I was not supporting Hillary. You know what I'm saying? So this is even before the Kamala thing.
Like, I just if I was to write book number 5, right? Let's put this out there, right? Because this is book number 1. I'm working on 2 or 3 simultaneously, right?
Right.
But so I was fortunate enough to speak to the 4 sisters out of Baltimore. They filed a class action lawsuit against their police department, right?
Right.
They were talking. They were mentioning, all of the abuse that that took place in the police department. I mean, harassed sexually, racial discrimination, you name it, right? And at the end of our conversation, I said, did you have support? And then, hell no, not from Black men, but not from Black women either.
Wow.
You dig? You dig? So one of the things that got me thinking is talking about the sick mind, right?
Exactly.
We get to the point where we are so used to that tokenism, that we are not looking for substance. And I went on, and I mentioned this before too. I said there's the same things that I was critical with Hillary Clinton, or with Trump was the same things I was critical with Hillary Clinton with, right? And when I talk about racism, especially like racism, it sounded on that eugenics movement, right? And Hillary came out very clear that she was a supporter of the eugenics movement, right? And so when I think about when folks are trying to call you out because of you not supporting someone based on their identity, I'm always asking, where's their substance at, right? Where's their record? And yeah, but you're right. You couldn't come out. You couldn't say anything this election. Again, it was, and again, I I'm a political cynic. That's why I call myself, right. I'm always, I did a saying. I used to say, I said, as a Black person choosing a political party is like being in a bad relationship. You you should leave, but you're so used to being screwed, right? So I got to the point where when I look at politics, and I know some politicians, and they'll say, hey, can you come out and support me? And I would say, here's my political agenda. Can you support it? And then we can start talking about what I can support. So yeah, that's a great conversation, man. Politics.
What you just said was very powerful, and something we're going on 8 year anniversary next month, and we've been preaching this for 8 months. we have to stop giving away the black vote, realize the power of the black vote, and every other group of people, candidates have to go to them to explain what they are going to do for them before they get their vote. With us, we just give our vote and then start asking for stuff and try to figure out why we ain't getting what we asked for. You know what I'm saying? So what you just said is, like, they asked for your support and you was like, yo, can you support my agenda? Like, that's what we need to be doing as a people, understanding the power of our vote and just stop just giving it away, or better yet, not voting. You know what I'm saying? Like, just, so.
That's even worse. That's even worse. Yes. And it was interesting because, I mean, how many black people have their agenda ready to give to their politician? Right.
You may be the first. You may be the first person in the 8 years of Black Westchester that I've actually heard say that.
Right.
Actually,
they knock on my door. They come in. Politicians knock on my door. I'll be willing to let in my house. You're gonna have a drink, and I'm gonna pass you what I need you to work on. And I need a timeline to go with that too, right? So, one of the things that I found, and again, this really let me write in this book, right? Is when we try to ask for some change, we are trying to ask for change by doing the same thing that was always been done, and then we're surprised that change hasn't happened, right? And so when and there was a situation, and there was a politician that we invited to the table, and they came in with what I call the your typical political talking points. They came in with the talking points. They were nice. There was press. They were clean talking points, and they were and what made us as a group upset, this group particular, was we gave that politician specific questions to answer during this 90-minute conversation, and not one of those questions were answered.
Really?
Right? Yeah, and so we no, I mean, it wasn't even the difficult ones, right? I mean, maybe for him it was difficult, but it wasn't difficult questions. It's how are you going to deal with some of the acts of bias and hate against the BIPOC community, right?
Yeah.
This was the height of 2020 when we started to see a lot of attacks happen, right? And we were asking those simple questions like, as a politician, what legislation can you push to do a police reform? And specifically, we were asking for no knock warrants. We were asking for carriers law, because that was one thing. That's another one. We were asking for specific things, right?
Right.
And what we got was, oh, let me look into that. Well, you do that, but until you do that, you kept my vote out, right? Because that's how we going to do it, right? Exactly. I'm not going to be voting for. We going to look into it. So I think we need to start as a community, start listening out our agenda. That's the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube. I couldn't be mad at him.
No,
I mean,
that was something that even the most honorable Elijah Muhammad said. You hold them accountable. You want my vote, but other what?
Wait, but the thing is, though, you talking about when he met with Trump, right?
No,
he tried to meet with the other side.
He wanted to contract with Black America.
Oh, okay, right.
This is. We give you a vote. This is what you say you're going to do, and we're going to hold you to it. But other ethnic groups do it without even talking about it.
Right. It's just normal.
Right. It's normal.
And it's expected by the candidates. Like, they know going in, you're going to have to meet their needs and their concerns and their agenda, or you're not walking out with that group support.
Right. And the reason why I couldn't be mad at Ice Cube, and the biggest criticism that you saw come out that was people were saying, who's Ice Cube to come up with a Black agenda? My response to those people was, where's your agenda then? You don't like his, come up with your own.
Wait, and the answer to that is a Black man in America. Like, everybody should have it.
That too, right? And again, I think that we are, and this is so important, that as we're trying to progress in the political field, in the medical field, education, the home, we're gonna have to retrain America's mind on what they could expect from us as a people.
No, we
right?
got to train. But I think
We got to retrain our mind. We got to retrain our minds first,
right?
Because
yeah.
we gotta, yes,
You're scaring people right now, right? You know that, right? So just this conversation, right?
mm-hmm.
It scares people because
Right.
people are sitting in their offices or sitting in their home, wherever they may be watching this show right now, and they're saying, "Wow, this guy's going to make it uncomfortable for me." Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to make my white counterparts look at me and say, "Do you agree with that Negro right there?"
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to put, and I have to say no, even though deep down they know something has
Yes,
to change.
yes, yeah, and AJ, to go back what you were saying too, bro, you're right. We gonna have to change our own mindset, right? And again, and it's going back to the book now. When I wrote the book, I was really addressing that one question throughout the whole book. And as a black conscious mind, and as my black conscious mind, how do I participate in the sustainability of white supremacy, right? And that's one of the things that when I put this book out, I knew that people were going to self-reflect, and I want them to. I
Right.
want them to, right? I want them to start thinking. I just did the first book signing, and I said, if I could commit myself to be honest with myself and then be vulnerable to put that out there for people to read it, there's no excuse for my white brothers and sisters to do the same exact thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? You as a person could look at, religion. God forbid, look at religion. If you could look at all the institutions that surround you, and you can begin to say, where can I identify ways that white supremacy is being sustained, right? And when you start doing that and you looking at yourself, that's how your mind becomes sick. Because when you start looking at things that you've been saying you've been fighting your whole life, and you realize not only have you not been fighting it, but you've been helping sustain it, that's how you get to that sick mind. So it's something that we would have to retrain America. We got to retrain ourselves. We got to retrain our personas, right? What does that look like for people? And we got to start having these honest conversations, right? And start with the area that's closest to you, which is the family, right?
Right.
And that's where this conversation needs to start, is with the family. I there's a part in this book where I realized just after the Trump election, a lot of my colleagues were, they were really upset about the outcome of the election. And then, if you remember, we all went home to Thanksgiving, right? So the
Right.
election happened, then Thanksgiving happened, right? And I don't know about your table, but there wasn't any arguments around my Thanksgiving table. And I'm not talking about my extended family too, right? I'm
Right.
not talking about my own. I'm talking about extended family. There is no. Again, let's make this clear. There are both Republicans and Democrats in my family, but no
Right.
one was arguing about the outcome of the election. I
Right.
went back to work and I realized that my fellow white colleagues, that was not the same experience. I heard there was a lot of turmoil, there was a lot of arguments, and that got me thinking. I was like, well, this is where I think we need to learn is if you're at a table and you have this discussion about politics, and your family can't even come to a normal conversation about how they disagree with that, then in America we're gonna have a serious problem, a
Right.
serious
Absolutely.
problem.
Right.
Absolutely.
And if you can't do that around your own kitchen table, well, how are you going to do that as a nation, right? So I just think it's an interesting concept, and I love tuning into this. Even last week, there's that brother from Russia that was commenting, and I was watching this on Facebook, so I don't understand he was on YouTube, so I
Right,
had to
right,
go
right.
back to the YouTube and really look at his comments, right? Really go
Right,
through them,
right,
because not all of them was posted. And
right. Yeah, because there was quite a few more. Yeah.
Like, yeah. So I got thinking to myself, I was like, well, man, I need to send him a copy of my book. maybe maybe he gets some answers from there. But I definitely appreciate this time.
That was the first time ever. I don't know if it was first tuning in, but it's first time ever asking the question. We
Right.
had never seen the name before. I wanted to say one thing and then get back to the book. Like when you talk about changing the mind, changing our minds, it reminded me of, and this NBA playoff time reminded me of Pat Riley when he first took over for the Knicks.
Yes.
And he said in his book that he wrote, he said before he could put one play in place, before he could do any, physical, the exercise and everything, he had to change the mindset because it was a losing mindset going on.
Yes.
And he had to change their mindset to they are winners or could be winners before he could do any of the academic basketball stuff. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like we're back at that again as a Knicks fan. It seems like we're back at the losing mindset again. But but it was interesting that he said that. He spent a great deal of time just changing the mindset before running plays, before giving his basketball philosophy. We talk about how he won championships. He had to change their mindset. And we have to do that in our community. We have to do that in our families. We have to do that in all our settings before we can actually, do that, change other people's minds about us. We have to change our own minds. Yeah.
That is absolutely right. Yes.
I wanted to, I underlined some things that you said, right? And I was like, man, Terry, man. You know what I'm saying?
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Wait. But you got to understand where this is coming from. Most of the time, it's Damon writing stuff, and I'm hearing, damn that Damon. Like, so for Damon to be like, man, this got to be powerful. I'm waiting to hear it.
So, because, all right, this sentence right here brought me back to January 6th. And where and when I start talking, you probably understand where I'm going. Where white supremacy, right, changed the narrative, and even looked at January 6th, an insurrection, as patriotism. But when you said in the book, the most extraordinary story of American patriotism is the story of the runaway slave. Yo, dude, you blew my mind.
Yes.
That is the major struggle for freedom.
Yes.
Explain. Yeah, come on, man. Explain on that.
Man, well, I want to have to backtrack for 1 minute with that one to get to a true understanding of that. So I'm going to put you in the mindset for a second. I'm and I think that probably came. Was it the first or second chapter, Damon? Do you know? Was that in the?
It was walking to running, entering the mind of white supremacy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, brother.
Yeah. There was a time. Okay, so I was at a 4th of July event, and I was sitting there, and I was looking around. People were enjoying themselves. They were celebrating. They were celebrating this holiday that represents freedom and justice.
Right.
And
but we wasn't free.
Well, not just that. I'm looking around and I'm looking at these faces, and I'm looking at people smiling and laughing and joking. And for some reason, I had a little, like, one of those vision flashes, And I remember it's the same kind of faces you saw when bodies were being lynched. Okay. And I started thinking to myself, where does our patriotism lie as a black body, right? Because we get to the part where we want to be so. I mean, the whole second chapter, called The American Celebration, talks about this. We want to be so involved in this dream called America that we'd be willing to do anything to do it, including breaking down our own mindset, breaking down our own consciousness, and trying to transpose it to something that we're not. Right? And so when I thought about the story of the runaway slave, if you could imagine being a slave and being in the land of the free, right? And you got to make a decision. Do I stay a slave in the land of the free, or do I break away to true freedom, right? And the runaway slave, and I have a whole book on runaway slave narratives, right? And as I was going through that book, each story said something unique to me, but there was one story in particular. So there was a slave who was a slave of a high politician, right? And this politician, treated his slave well. He gave them food, even allowed the slave to make money on the side, dressed them well, and this slave still ran away. Okay.
Wow.
And when a slave was questioned, why did you run away? He said, my master could give me all this stuff, but he could never give me my freedom.
Wow.
Now let's think about that. There's a part of the book what I wrote I call I am not a success. I said I am blessed, but success is what I yearn to be. Right? We get to the point where we look at power, money, all these things as freedom. And you can have all the money, all the education in the world, and you talk about this all the time, right? We look at politicians, right? You can have all the success, quote unquote, success in the world, but still have the mentality of the slave. And most importantly, never, ever wanted to break free because you become comfortable in where you're at. So you can imagine that slave who was dressed well, who was fed well, was treated well by his master, but still he was like, my master could give me everything material, but could never give you my freedom. And that's the reason why he ran away. And that's something that I think when I talk about the sick mind is how do you get to that point? Right? How do you get to that point where you say, all right, I might have what I might see as success, right? I might have what I see as, being part of this patriotic stance, but what does freedom actually looks like? And I think for me, it's when you could be truly unapologetic without having to worry about losing, losing your livelihood.
Exactly.
Right. You should be able to be vulnerable enough to be unapologetic and not worry about losing your livelihood, because, like you said, Damon, right now there's gonna be someone that's gonna say, "Hey, you agree with Terry Washington?" And that person is gonna have to say no, just keep their livelihood.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Man, I've been there.
Yeah. I know. So yeah, this was what
we get a lot of people that say they agree with us, but they can't come out and say it. Like they agree with the topics or with a statement Damon made or an article that I wrote, but because they work in City Hall or whatever the structure is, they can't publicly admit that, or they're gonna lose their pension or whatever it is.
Oh yeah, it's what's interesting about that too is Damon knows I've talked to a lot of police officers over the last couple of years, right? And when George Floyd happened, my cell phone was blowing up. And it was from police officers, both black and white, saying this is not policing, right? And I'm thinking to myself, cool, you need to go to your departments and have that conversation,
exactly.
right? Because don't come tell just me that the black friend that you might have that you're keeping your cell phone. You need to go tell your departments, like, hey, we need it as a department. We need to come out and make this stance against what have you not. Even in when we was in Mount Vernon, right, and we was talking about looking at Kenneth Chamberlain Jr. Right. There should have been a bigger outcry in that community, not just from the community, but from policing themselves, because the brother was in law enforcement. Right. Talking about that Blue Lives Matter. What about his blue life, right? Where did that play into that conversation, right?
And he was a veteran. You talk about patriotism. He was a veteran.
And he was a veteran. I again, Kenneth Chamberlain Jr., that brother is, absolutely fire. Love him. I love the fact of what he's doing, how he's took this tragedy and brought to light a new conversation. But the whole conversation that what got me is when he said,
for the record, that's White Plains Police Department.
White Plains Police Department. Yeah. When he said White Plains,
and she gonna be texting me.
Oh yeah. She worked with my brother.
What's wrong with Terry? He know that's not my
white planes. When he said white planes have their own George Floyd,
Exactly.
right,
Mm-hmm.
right, and you think about that, and because you have people who are not going to say, hey, I support that, I support it because they're afraid of losing their livelihood.
Right.
And the same thing happens with anytime you see. Now I had this pact, maybe my own self pact. I didn't put this in the book though, but about 4 or 5 years ago, I said that I wasn't going to speak out against anyone that is speaking about Black liberation. Right,
Mm-hmm.
no matter if I agreed of their tactics or not.
Right.
I myself would make that pact. I would not speak out against them, either in person or publicly or behind their back. Right. So every time someone would say, "Hey, Terry, what do you think about X, Y, and Z?" Even if I don't agree with their tactics, but their mission is Black liberation,
Right.
I say, "Well, that's my brother, that's my sister. I can't talk about them." And I think if we start doing that for hours, can you imagine how powerful that would be? If we as a community was like, we're not going to speak out against Black liberation anymore, right? So next time someone comes to me, say, "Yo, man, heard what Damon said?" I'm like, "Yo, that's my brother. I ain't gonna speak out against him," right?
Right.
Imagine how powerful that would be if
Exactly.
everyone in the community did that.
Exactly.
And so that's where we need to go. That's where we need to go.
Especially since they use, and historically they've always used one of us to take another one of us down.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like they use that face to make Muhammad Ali, like how dare he not go fight for this? They put Jackie Robinson up there. Like, oh, I don't know why he won't fight for this great country that lets us make all this money. You know what I'm saying? Like I had lost when I first saw that, I lost a lot of respect for Jackie Robinson. I hear what he did, but to allow himself to be used like that to tear down Muhammad Ali for not fighting for his standing his cause,
Right.
Go ahead, David. Go ahead. Terry.
Well, they do that all the time, man. But I also think what Terry, I'm like, you got some great quotes, and things that you say in the book. Even though I didn't finish, and I still got to finish it, but the little that I read before the show, I'm like, yo, dude, like, you say this. Yeah. When dealing with racism and the historical trauma it has dealt, those who can participate in eliminating racism are not ready to engage. Damn, that's your politicians, that's your preachers, they have the positions to eliminate it.
Yes.
And they still don't. And
yes.
even like politicians.
Yes. Yes, and that one was specifically written about a politician who owned slaves by the name of I think it was Dixon, if I'm not mistaken. And so he passed away. The senator passed away, and his wife wanted to make sure that he was remembered as the benevolent, senator whose slaves loved him. She even said in the book. She even said in the book, when he died, they came and they had tears that was truthfully mournful. Oh man. And I thought about, this is probably one of the most, as I described this particular part, I said this is probably the sickest my mind ever got, just to even think about that concept. Is your husband, who was a senator, had the power to push forward the abolitionist movement,
right?
But instead decided I would just be a good master, and that would be good enough. Right. And I think when we look at politicians and let's say this leaders, I'll throw in that community leaders, I'll throw in there pastors and preachers, anyone that's going to lead a flock, let's put it that way. Right. You're always given the opportunity to actually do the right thing, but somewhere along the lines you decide, you know what, I'm going to choose either money or power over the right thing, right? So I'll give you an example. Locally, the police chief, the police department was like, we want to collaborate with an organization that Terry works with, and to deal with X, Y, and Z. And the police chief told his department, if you got to bring Terry in, FYI, he's going to hold you accountable. So just be prepared for that.
Right.
And the reason that is because I said, I'm going to put you on my calendar and I want to email you every 3, 6, 12 weeks to say, where are we on this item? Where are we on this item? And if you don't respond, I will drive to your location and I'll this is where it comes down. So if I'm going to sign my name on a dotted line,
Right.
you are committing yourself through an
Right.
ongoing conversation, right?
Right.
And I think that's where leadership needs to be. And at the same time, we get to the. I think maybe you said this, or maybe I can't remember who said this on the show. But if you got someone saying like, everything's going to be all right, that means someone has sold out already. Like it's someone.
It's a time for healing. That means they sold you out. Once they
sold you out,
they already sold you out. They sold you out. I've experienced that twice with Black Panther.
Yes, and I love that because I talk about healing a lot, right? Healing is so important,
right?
But before you get to healing, you got to get to that truth, right? I know folks who always want to talk about it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged the truth yet. Even acknowledge it.
Exactly.
Forget dealing with it. Haven't even acknowledged it yet. They're talking about healing. Like, how are you going to heal something you don't even know what it is, right?
Exactly.
And so, again, I'm a huge fan of healing. I always go on the record. I said, as a country, we are so addicted to the trauma, and we always avoid the healing. I put that in the book multiple times, right? We always avoid the healing. But the other part about that trauma is, as America or as a country, as a society, we haven't even acknowledged the trauma yet, or where it comes from. Oh, how is it sustained? How is it sustained? And when I talk about racism, people. Again, I'm not talking about like your. The funny part about this too, I have never in my life called someone a racist. This is another thing I want to mention too. I have never called someone a racist. I have asked. I had a police individual one time called me on my phone out the blue, and he asked me, "Do I think police is racist?" And I said, well, I don't want to answer that question. Instead, I would like you to tell me, what have your department done to eliminate white supremacy, right? I don't got time to talk about racism anymore,
right?
Because racism is a part that's like a pawn that's being used in white supremacy. When we think about racism, because Damon, you were at this meeting, but they were talking about diversifying law enforcement, bringing in more Black officers. And one funny thing about that, I was sitting around this table, I'm listening to the story of these Black officers, and they're all talking about how much trauma they got in the department. And I'm thinking, so why would I want to convince someone to join this trauma? So now I'm asking the question, as a department, what can you guys do to create an environment in which this trauma can't even exist, right? Like, we should be able to go to law enforcement and say, you know what, if there is racism in your department, you need to eliminate it, and this is how you need to do it, right? And so for Black and brown bodies, law enforcement become attractive again, right? And so, but you got officers right now who's physically hurt, who are mentally hurt, because of the job, and not even the, because they have to do the same thing everybody else has to do on the job. They got to go through all of the dangers as the job that has. But in addition to that, they also got to deal with the mental anguish and the issues that that this white supremacy structure surrounds them with. So I said to the brother, I'm like, listen, I don't want to even talk about if you're racist or not, or if your department racist. I just want to know what your guys are doing to eliminate white supremacy in the culture, because we know it's there, and if as long as it's there, racism is going to be a part of it,
right?
And so that's what we have to get to.
No, I think that's honest. And you said, if racism is a disease, America has used malpractice to treat it. Damn.
Wow.
I was like, man, I wish I made that one up. That's David K. Jones.
That's a hip hop quotable. Yeah.
Well, I tell you right now, man, you gonna find some good one. Now, there's a part in this piece. So I was talking to sister out of St. Louis. She just bought the book. The book just arrived, and we were talking about some police and stuff. And like the book literally just got to her desk. She's like, "Oh my gosh, this guy here!" She opens it up. She just opens like this. This now you crack a book open, and it falls on probably one of the most deepest poems that I wrote in that book, right? And it talks about it's called what's the title of the book? I forget what it's called now, but it's called They Call Me, and I don't know if I can say this on this show or not, but
Yes, you can.
I can say okay. It's called They Called Me Nigger, right? And it's probably one of the most. So when I wrote that piece, and I wrote this piece, and I wrote it in a way that connects each line. So as you read this, you literally see the connections throughout the whole thing.
Right.
And the way I wrote this piece is, what are we allowed this world to do to us in order to fit in? Right. So they call me this word because maybe they forgot my name, right? Or they want me to be part of their portrait. They want me to be, if you want to reference it, it's on page 60, right? Yeah, page 60. So it's probably one of the most craziest things I've written in regards to looking at how we have accepted this trauma in order to be part of the culture, right? To be a part of this mass culture. We are willing to be called out of our name, put out of our minds, our consciousness. To be a part of something that, as I described in a book, I feel like we're looking in this bubble, and we got to make a decision. Did we go through the bubble, or did we go around the bubble, right? And either way you look at it, David, it causes us a sort of sick mind. My own dad, I sent him a copy. He's still trying to get through the title. He was like, just the title. Right? And I was like, Dad, you got to get past the title. You got to get past the title because the one thing that I did, and this is another part too. It gets a little bit more hopeful towards the end, and I there's a part that calls "I Fight for My People." That's the third chapter, and I fight for my people. It all came because I was in Alabama, and I ran into this Black Marine, and we were having this conversation. He was telling me about his grandfather who also fought in for our country, and how his grandfather got back to the U.S. and had to go through Jim Crow and discrimination, and then I asked what I call is probably one of the most disrespectful questions I could think of at that time, and I just blurted it out. I was like, "So your grandfather went through that, and then you decided to go fight for this country? Like, why?"
Right.
And he said, "Because I fight for my people." And I was like, "Whoa, that's the title of my chapter right there. I fight for my people." But when I wrote that, I was thinking like, and Damon, this goes back to when you and I first met. We were sitting at that we were having. This is back in the day when you.
Yeah, I just read the poem. This is.
Yeah. So I tell you right now, I was with Damon the first time, and it was a long day. I forgot it was like a press conference.
Oh yeah, right.
First time. Yeah. First time I met your wife, I didn't know your wife at the time. I saw selling her wings. By the way, I haven't eaten meat since October because of your book. By the way, but
there you go.
But there was a time when we were just chilling, and I was like, man, you look exhausted. And then because you're doing everything right. You're just doing all this stuff. Like, man, you look tired. And part of this thing I realized is for those like yourself and AJ and whoever who's constantly trying to bring that Black consciousness to our community, trying to make sure that we have true justice. I realized something. I said, one, we fight for our people, but those who are fighters, we gotta accept who we are. We are folks who have agreed to take on a sick mind, a strained body, and a weary spirit to fight for our people, right? So when someone says to me, Terry, where do you find the time? When do you find the time to do this work? I'm like, I don't have a choice,
Right.
right? I don't got a choice. I already accepted those three things. I accepted, I accepted the sick mind, I accepted the tired body, and the weary spirit, and I understand why I'm doing that work. And I got to the point where, and again, this is also in a book where I say I can't afford to be tired. I don't have that luxury. Tiredness is a luxury, right? That's a luxury. To say that like, because our ancestors was able to say I'm tired. Like how they could say, what, master, I'm tired today. It ain't happening. So like to us, who are we to take tiredness as our weak point, right? And so I think the whole part of this whole book is to not just to look at how do we re-examine it is how do we look at and these deconstruct racism and white supremacy, but it's also how do we gather our strength to make sure that we are able to leave to the next generation, right, a better future, right, but where their sickness is not repeated over and over again. Because that's what's happening. The show last week when and AJ, you talked about the young lady that was stabbed in the school, and then you showed a video of the mother who has said, I remember back then, right, where this violence was taking place. You're looking at generational trauma happen over and over again.
Right.
I had a family on my show, and I had mother and grandmother on the show, and then I had a picture that was drawn by the daughter, and the son was killed, right? And I'm looking at 3 generations of trauma right there.
Right.
This is in that one snapshot on that show. And I'm thinking we are just passing on trauma. And again, because we're not willing to take the necessary steps, because we're not willing to do what is, as I call, we're not willing to crawl, walk, or run towards racism.
Right.
We just pass on the trauma with no sense of healing. So that's what you said. When people say it's time to heal, I'm like, if they say it's time to heal, but they haven't acknowledged that trauma yet, then you're right, David. Someone done took a hand out already. And,
exactly. But we don't talk about, like, we don't, as Black people, like, we don't acknowledge it. Like, we don't acknowledge the generational trauma of what white supremacy has done to Black communities, right?
Mm-hmm.
To the point, at this point, right, we are the co-conspirators.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. We've become the co-conspirators because we're so traumatized and we're so beaten up by white supremacy, right? We're beating up ourselves, because we lost, because we haven't healed. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like you can't, when a system separates family, how do you pass on family values when there's no family?
Right.
How do you do that? How do you do that? Right?
Right.
You can't, and then we wonder why, right? Then we wonder why the institution of marriage is lower than it was, in the 50s, 40s, 20s, and probably lower than it was in slavery. You understand? We had more family values and more family units in slavery than we do now in this quote unquote era of wokeness.
Yeah. Oh, I'll tell you right now, if you want to talk about wokeness, there's the first piece of this book. I dive right into that, by the way, and I'll tell you the exact page on it, by the way. So it's on page 2, not even that far, right? I said in the hit, what good is a conscience that proclaims it is woke when its capitalized ideologies leaves you morally broke? Now, when I let's for a second, let's process that for a second. I love this when we talk about wokeness in this society, we get this all the time. Like, I'm woke. I'm like, sometimes you might need to go back to sleep because because your wokeness is causing you more trauma right now. And you and the part about this too is you had a good point there, Damon. Is about when we look at the family structure and the family values, we start to I'll tell you the story. My grandmother, God bless her soul. I love my grandma dearly. She passed away back in 2018, I believe. And before before when she was alive, she had this picture of white Jesus, right? I think most black families have the picture of white Jesus,
Exactly.
and that's normal. Now, wasn't so normal is that she would literally have us talk to this page and you gotta respect you gotta respect the white Jesus on the wall, right? And as a person, I was like, I didn't even get a conversation with her about the good times conversation, the episode of Good Times. I didn't rehash that one, but I remember thinking to myself is, wow, what a mindset to have, right? I'm not going to get into the whole, who that picture is depicting. I wasn't going to get into that, but I was thinking, what a mindset to have. And then when I started thinking about white supremacy in this book, that's one of the images that came to my mind. And the fact of the matter is that when we start looking at how we start doing things in our lives, we realize that we have fallen to this sickness further than we actually acknowledge. Right? When someone talks to me about black on black crime, I always say, yeah, that's white supremacy. And then someone would say, how can black on black crime be white supremacy? I said, it's easy, because the same idea that will put in same fear that's put in a white person's mind to fear a black body. What make you think that same fear can be put into a black mind? Right? We have there's a study that was done back in the 60s, 70s, and it was redone back in 2010, where they would have a white doll and a black doll, right?
Right. Yes.
As these little kids, right? Who's the ugly doll? Who's the good doll? The bad doll? And time again, no matter what the skin color of the child was, they would choose a white doll as a good doll, as the pretty doll, and then the black doll as the bad doll, and the other doll. Now we're talking about pieces of plastic, and we're talking about young kids, right? And they would ask the black kid, which doll best looks like you. Now they'll choose that black doll, and they already committed that black doll to being bad and ugly, and they choose that black doll to represent them. They're kids, right? And if there's enough toxic in our world to poison these young minds, to have them choose the color of these dolls as good and bad based on their skin color, how much poison do you think we have in our brains as adults? Right. Exactly. Right. I said this before too. I was like, when you look at some of we talk a lot about the crime bill that was passed, but you remember it were black folks who were pushing for that crime bill.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
They were pushing for that crime bill, and the reason was because we were allowed to be fair of one another. We allowed that fear to sink in, and we became fearful of what the Clinton calls the super predators, right? And I even put this in my book at one point. I remember growing up in that era, and we would hear folks talk about the black youth being the lost youth, and I would say, well, we are black, right? If I'm lost, you're lost, we're lost, right? And so in this mindset, I really, and again, it's going back to this retraining that brain. As we're retraining America, we got to retrain ourselves. We're going to have to retrain ourselves to say, what is it? And here's a question. This is the one question I always say to folks who are watching: is every thought that you have, every action that you take, if you can take a minute to say, where is that coming from? Through which lens, right? Is it coming through the lens of black liberation, or is it coming through the lens of white supremacy? And I would tell you right now, most of our thoughts are coming through the lens of white supremacy, because that is what we have grown up. That's what's been taught in our schools. That's what's on our TV. That's what's in our papers, and that's why stuff like Black Westchester newspaper is so important, because it gives the voice. And again, I have my screen up right now, but back there, we talk about some of the black newspapers back in the 1800s and the early 1900s. That's how I found out about Moses P. Cobb and Samuel J. Battle, right? Is little black papers, because they were publishing, hey, we're going to follow what's happening with these two brothers in New York City, right? In the white papers, and I have both of them, they were like, they were just talking about their physical appearance. They weren't talking about their lives. Right. And so I think when we talk about, when we look at media, when you look at, the paper, whatever it is, we've just been getting that information through our whole lives. And so as those little kids who's choosing the white doll over the black doll, as adults, we are doing the same exact thing. So the question that we need to ask ourselves is, every time we think about something, every time we have a thought or an action that we want to take on, which lens are we coming from? So
I want to give you a chance. Where can people buy the book? How can people follow you? Social media, all of that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you can buy the book on any platform that you choose. It is everywhere. It's Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I even saw it on Google Play and even on Walmart.com. Like, if you just Google "Welcome to the Sick Mind of the Same Person," wherever you got your points at, use your points to buy the book.
Yeah, I got mine with my Amazon Prime. My Amazon Prime came the next day. Yeah.
One of my colleagues said that she was saving up her points on Barnes and Noble for like 5 years, and she just spent it on my book. I was like, I appreciate that. So it's everywhere. And you follow me on Twitter. I got 2 Twitter accounts. I don't even know what the names are, but I'll send it to you as well.
Yes.
But definitely, Strategies for Justice is the other platform where you can find me. And one of the things I want people to really get from the book is, one of our folks who are reading the book said, she had to put it down a couple of times after reading it, because she had to self-reflect on something that she just read, right? And you hopefully people get that throughout the book, right? You go to read it and you say, man, let me think about that for a second. And that's exactly what this book is meant to do, because it's taking you through my mind But like I said in the book, I am not that naive to believe only my mind is sick. So, so brother,
and and we didn't have enough time. We got to go. But one thing that you wrote, that your son said to you, which was very powerful. If I'm capable, why should I be likable? And I was like, wow, I just threw the book down, right? I was like, I just threw the book. I was like, that's what I'm talking about, right? Capable. I don't care if I'm likable. I'm capable of doing the job. And for a young man to really see that, man, was beautiful, bro. Was beautiful.
I want to definitely invite you back to continue not just the conversation about your book, but these conversations. I want to also, as the editor-in-chief, anytime you just want to write something for the paper or something like that, we definitely welcome, because we need more of that for our community to read. And we definitely have you come back as we talk about other topics that are covered in here, and have you come on as an expert. Definitely, my brother, I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's been fantastic. I love watching this from Pennsylvania. So keep it going, and as you both know, I'm a huge fan.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
All right.
And as you see, as soon as I got my book. I haven't broken into it yet, but I got it. I'm taking some time off around Memorial Day, and I'm definitely taking it with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Yes.
Soon, man.
All right, see ya.
And we're about to get into our next guest after this video.